Today, we're going to be talking about how to make Clio work for you. My name is Christopher Fain. I'm the 2021-22 AmeriCorps member based out of the Southeast Ohio History Center in Athens, Ohio. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from Ohio University and a master's degree in public history from American Public University. I completed my master's practical work at EPIC, the Irish Immigration Museum in Dublin, Ireland. So let's get into it. What is Clio? Clio is a free digital platform that uses text, images, primary and secondary sources, and links to tell a story. It interprets historically and culturally significant people, places, and events. And it utilizes both an online website and a mobile application to guide the public to thousands of sites around the U.S. So what can your institution do with Clio? A better question is, what can't your institution do with Clio? Clio allows you to create entries. These entries can be on standalone sites, museums, culturally significant areas, or tours. It allows you to connect with the public and your fellow institutions within your community and your larger region. It allows you to integrate different types of media into those entries. And it allows you to strengthen your online presence and appeal to visitors. Truly, the possibilities with Clio are endless. Your institution has decided to give Clio a try. How do you add things? An institution has several options when adding things to Clio. We'll discuss the overview here, and then a little bit later I'll walk you through step by step. There are two different types of entries an institution can create: a standalone entry or a tour. Standalone entries could be for things such as museums, historical societies, historical landmarks, signs, markers, and even a time capsule, which allows you to showcase the location of structures that no longer exist. Creating tours is a little more complicated as there are 7 different kinds. We'll discuss them a little more in depth later, but the goal is to pick the tour or tours that work to showcase your content and story the best. As with anything, the first place to start is by making an account. Clio allows for both individual accounts and institutional logins. I would suggest creating an institutional login to keep all of your tours in one place and where an administrator can proofread and approve anything before it's shared to the public. To create an institutional login, you must first create an account. When you do this, I would suggest using a general, organizational email so that if you need to change administrators, the account remains accessible. Have your chosen administrator fill out the form and check the box for institutional administrator. They'll be asked to put in the name of your organization and then click submit. In a few days, you should receive an email granting you access to your new institutional login. Once you have this, you'll be able to set your password. From there, anyone you give your password to will be able to log in under the institutional login. The administrator's account will remain separate and should have a different password that only the administrator has access to. Logging in is simple. From the Clio homepage, click on the Sign In/Join button and choose Institutional Login. You'll choose your organization's name from the drop-down menu, put in the password, click Submit, and you're ready to start creating your entries. You've got your login and you're ready to begin creating entries. Let's go through step by step how to create an entry. To begin, you're going to open the drawer on the left-hand side of the screen, find the plus sign for Create New Entry, and click on it. The first part of your entry is location, location, location. Try to have as much information as possible. The exact or closest street address and or GPS coordinates are a must-have. Once you have entered the address, click Next. Here, you're going to want to check for duplicates. If an entry has already been created for your site or topic, you can always review and improve this existing entry. But, as we can see, our site doesn't have an entry, so we can proceed. The next and most important part is filling in your details. Start with a title. For our example, we're going to use an entry I created for the Maud Collins Historical Marker in MacArthur, Ohio. After our title, the next box is the introduction. This is meant to be a short description of the site or story you are looking to tell. It is required to be a minimum of 50 words. This is also a great place to point out the narration feature. Clio allows for you to upload an audio recording of the text above. This is a great tool to make your content more accessible and can spice up your tours when we talk about those a little later. Once your introduction is finished, you'll see the Maps section. You can choose to enable the Google Street View or not. I personally like to leave it on. This is also where you can fine-tune the location of your entry with the little red pin. It may take a while to get it placed exactly where you want it, but you'll get the hang of it. After the maps, you come to the bulk of your content, the backstory and context section. This section is required to be at least 100 words, but ideally should be somewhere between 3 and 6 paragraphs. This is where you tell your story, so make it a good one. At the bottom again, you'll see the option to add the narration. After the backstory and context section are the sources. Make sure, as you are researching for your entry, that you keep track of all the sources you use. Try to use a mixture of primary and secondary sources. To add your sources, click on the citation helper. From the drop-down, choose your type of source, and then fill in as much information as you can. It's okay if you don't have all of the information, but try to have as much as possible. When you're finished, click Confirm and it will be added to the list. Repeat this process for each of your sources. You do not need to add photo sources here. After sources is your photos. Add as many relevant photos as you like. Visuals are always great. You'll click to upload your image, provide a caption, the photo source, and the alt text. The alt text is a description of the photo for those who have visual impairments. Next is the section for additional links. These aren't required, but they are nice to have. Links can be relevant videos, books, articles, websites, or any other things that you can send visitors to for more information. This could even be your own website if you have more information to offer on the place or topic discussed in your entry. Last is the information section. This is very helpful for places you would like people to visit or for helping visitors with certain interests find your entry. Here, you will see the address information that you put in. This is a good time to review it. There are places to list the site's public hours and a phone number to the site or the individual or organization responsible for the site. There are two drop-down menus at the bottom. First is Type. This drop-down menu shows three options: historic sites, monuments, landmarks, and public art, museums, galleries, and archives, and time capsules, historic images, and recollections. Choose the one that best describes your entry. Second is Tags. This lengthy drop-down shows specific themes that you can check. Choose as many or as few that apply to your topic. Our example is a historic marker, so for type, I've chosen historic sites, monuments, landmarks, and public art, and the topic is about the first female sheriff in the state of Ohio. So for tags, I chose firefighting and law enforcement, and women's history. At the bottom of the entry, you'll see a box about contributing entries. We'll discuss that when we're looking at tours, so we can move on. You'll need to check the box, certifying that this is your work, and then type your name. This credits the entry to you. If you aren't quite sure if you're finished, you can click Save for later and come back to your work. Your work can be found on the institution page as a draft. If you are ready, you can click Submit for review, and let your administrator know that your entry is ready to be reviewed. A note to administrators: you'll want to proofread the entries for any spelling or grammar errors. Also, make sure your content is accurate and reflects well on your institution. If you see errors, it's my suggestion that you ask the writer to edit and resubmit the entry. Once you're ready, you can approve the entry and it will be available to the public. Approved entries can also be found on the institution's page. Approved entries are always available to review and improve, but remember, this changes the citation. If anyone but the original author edits the entry, credit will be shared between both writers. Now that you know how to create an entry, let's look at how to create a tour. To begin, open the drawer and find the plus button for Create a Tour. Next, you will need to choose the type of tour you wish to create. Let's take a look at each tour type a little more in depth to help you make the best choice for your project. The first type of tour we're going to look at is the virtual museum or site tour. This is for tours housed within a single building or site, such as a museum, historic site, or cemetery. To create this tour, the museum, site, or cemetery must have an existing entry. You will then create your tour by creating contributing entries attached to that original site entry. I told you that contributing entry section would come around again. To begin, click on the virtual museum or site tour. This is where you can create a new main entry or use one that already exists. For this example, I'm going to use the existing entry for another site I work with, the John G. Black Historical Center in Gallipolis, Ohio. As we can see, there are no other entries connected to the main John G. entry. At the bottom, there are a few options. If your tour is new and you need to create new entries, click on the option Create and Add New Entry. At this point, the process is the same as creating an entry. You would add all of your different tour stops as contributing entries, drag them into the appropriate order, and you have your tour. A completed example of this type of tour is the Works, Ohio Center for History, Art, and Technology, located in Newark, Ohio. There is a description of the site and a list of entries for the tour. If we click Start, we are taken to the first entry. Here, it looks exactly like a regular entry, except for the previous and next buttons located on the top and bottom of the page. These buttons allow us to navigate through the tour stops without exiting the tour. As a note, These tour entries also have the audio narration feature, which enables those who may have visual impairments to listen to written materials within your tour. In essence, it creates a free audio guide. It is basic, but it is cost-effective, user-friendly, and your visitors will thank you for it. Our next tour type is the walking tour. This can be used to combine several different entries for different structures or sites into one interpretive tour. Tours are usually no more than 3 miles and can use both standalone entries and contributing entries. When you click on the tour type to create your tour, you'll begin with the address of your starting point. Again, we'll use the John G. After I select the existing entry for the John G, I need to decide where I want my visitors to go next. For this example, I've chosen the Pine Street Colored Cemetery. As we can see, there is an existing entry for this site as well, so I'll add it to my tour. Next, I want my visitors to walk to the former site of the Lincoln Colored School. As we can see, there is no existing entry for this site, so we'll need to create a new entry. Our completed example is a walking tour of downtown Huntington, West Virginia. As you can see, it looks and functions virtually the same as the virtual museum tour. The only difference being it covers a larger area, but that area is still small enough to be accessed on foot. One other nice piece of using the walking tour is the ability to add audio clips between stops to keep your visitors engaged. Next is the driving or biking tours. These tours are designed identical to the walking tours, except they cover a much larger area. Ideally, we want to keep driving or biking tours somewhere between 30 minutes and about 2 hours. The creation of this tour is relatively the same as the walking tour. We're going to continue using the John G as our example. In our walking tour example, we sent visitors to locations that were walkable from the John G Center. In this example, I want to design a tour to send visitors to see the colored schools around Gallia County using the John G as a starting point. So to begin, we use John G's existing entry. From there, we need to search and see if there are any colored schools that have entries. As we can see, none of them do. So, we will need to create entries for each one of these sites. Once we've created these entries, we can put them into the tour in the appropriate order, add a title and a description, and you've got your tour. One of the great things about this tour is that Google Maps is integrated and can provide directions as visitors move around the county. Also, as with the walking tour, audio clips can be added between entries for information about the route, interesting facts about the region, and just to keep your visitors more generally engaged with your tour. Our completed example is the medical history of Huntington Trail. Next is the thematic tour or heritage trail. This could also be done as a walking, biking, driving, or even hiking tour. But what makes them unique is the focus on a theme or story that serves primarily as an education tool. These can include regional, state, or even nationwide trails or highways that follow a particular theme or story. An example is a heritage trail that I'm working on for the Morgan's Raid Trail. For more than 500 miles across the state of Ohio, 56 interpretive signs follow General Morgan's path as he raided across Ohio during the Civil War. I'm putting together a tour using these signs as the stopping points to tell the story of Morgan's raid, and to allow visitors to do it virtually, or as a driving tour. My tour stops give more information than the signs themselves, and give information about what was going on between the sign points. Similar to the other tours, entries on this style of tour can be standalone or contributing. It's totally up to you. For my tour on the Morgan's Raid, I chose for every interpretive sign to be a contributing entry for the larger tour. Audio narration is also available on these entries as well as between entries, and Google Maps is integrated to help provide directions for visitors who wish to follow the tour in person. After that is hiking trails. Similar to the virtual museum, hiking trails must start with an entry for the park, zoo, or other location in which it is housed. This can be an existing entry, or you can create it yourself. For our example, I have chosen the Hocking Hills State Park just outside of Logan, Ohio. In this example, I want my tour to start at the new visitor center just outside of Logan. As we can see, there are no entries for the Hocking Hills beyond the main entry. So, I will need to create all of those entries myself. After that, the hiking trails are created the same as the rest of the tours. What is unique about the hiking trail is the opportunity to provide not only human history, but also environmental and natural history as well. This is a great time to use those narrations to engage visitors with not only the history of the trail, but also the nature and wildlife that they may see on the trail. Our completed example is the Cranberry Glades Botanical Area Science and Nature Trail in Pocahontas County, West Virginia. Next is digital story maps. This option is similar to thematic tours, but their primary function is as an educational resource. Entries are not required to be pinned to a location, as they will only be appearing within this story map. When you click on digital story maps, you do have to choose an institution to house the story map under. As you're adding new entries, you can simply put in the institution's address, or if there is a location for the entry, go ahead and include it so if visitors do decide to follow the map in person, they know where to go. After that, you will complete your tour like the rest. A completed example is the Virginia Women in History Heritage Trail, Richmond. As we see, it is possible to do a driving tour, but the primary focus is still information. Last but not least is the MultiZone Tour. This style of tour is one of my personal favorites. It is basically the same as the virtual museum, but it allows for a building or complex to be broken into zones. These zones can be different floors in a building or different sections in a park or cemetery. For this example, we'll use the Adena Mansion and Gardens in Chillicothe, Ohio as our main entry. Adena is a historic mansion with 2 floors, extensive outer grounds, and a visitor center. After we choose our tour type and we have our main entry, we'll need to start adding new zones. I titled my first zone Visitor Center. After that, I can add entries that are related to the exhibits in the Visitor Center. Continue adding zones and entries until you have all of your stops. Don't forget your audio clips. The Clio.com offers several guides for choosing topics and how to write content for your entries and tours. I hope you have found this guide helpful and decide that Clio is right for you and your institution. Happy creating!